All right, thank you so much for the warm introduction. So right now, with everybody that has already participated in this, I wanted to say first and foremost, congratulations. It's like Senator Cirinio said, this is one of the most difficult things that a board of trustees can do. And I know it can take a lot out of you. And really, the thing that I have to encourage everybody to do is at some point in time today, if you get the opportunity to, let your colleagues know. This is one of those things that if you don't experience it yourself, you might get overwhelmed at the start. So a little bit of that extra knowledge that you have from participating in it relatively recently would be something that's wonderful to pass along to your colleagues. So let's dig into this immediately. If I can figure out how to do the technology, there we are. Okay, so last year, we noticed an uptick of high-profile failed searches across the country. And one thing that ACTA wanted to do is we wanted to find out what was happening and what we could do to help, what we can do to get information in the hands of trustees to help this process go a little bit more smoothly. What we found was that there is a broad consensus from higher education researchers and experts that this is something that is one of the most important things that a board will do, and also one of the most difficult things that a board will do. Urgent leadership is needed here for boards of trustees. This isn't something that we can just put as something that's number 2 or 3 on a to-do list. Anytime a presidential vacancy pops up, urgent, immediate, and engaged trusteeship is essential to fill that vacancy. In addition, we did some digging and found that, just as we were looking into this, the American Council on Education put out their 5-year annual college presidential survey. It came out just this year in 2023, and the survey was conducted in 2022, so it's very recent data. And what we found is that 55% of current college presidents plan to step down in the next 5 years. The average tenure of a president is now under 6 years, down a full year since the last survey in 2011, and then down 2.5 years since 2006. Clearly, boards need to be more prepared to undertake a presidential search, but at the same time, presidents have been stating that they have been not getting as great information during the presidential search process and previous surveys. Compared to 2016, fewer presidents feel as though they're getting a clear understanding of the institution's expectations of what their role should be, of what the board's expectations of what their relationship with them should be, the institution's financial conditions, and the challenges facing the institution. Now, it is important to note that still the majority of presidents do feel as though the searches are going relatively well, but all of these declines are both a problematic one and it's fixable. It's one of those things that trustees can directly address to make sure that they develop a great working relationship with their president. So what we ended up doing is partnering with Dr. Robert Dickinson on a new publication that just came out relatively recently. In fact, it's been doing so well that we ran out of physical copies. So if anybody has interest, we do have an email address list out there. We'd be happy to send you copies for free. Dr. Dickinson has about 40 plus years of experience in higher education administration. He's been the chair of the governor's cabinets in 2 states, the visiting scholar at the University of Michigan, and president emeritus at the University of Northern Colorado. As a presidential search consultant, he's participated in dozens of these searches. It was incredibly gratifying to work with Dr. Dickinson. He was just a wealth of knowledge and somebody that he gave us his email address and had it published in the publication. If anybody needs help, he's a guy that we highly encourage folks to reach out to. You could talk your ear off about this topic in depth. And this quote, I liked it so much, we ended up putting it directly on the publication. A successful board is one that is prepared for a vacancy before it even begins. That is the type of preparation that we look for in this. And I was really tempted during this presentation, just go ahead and read that publication off for you, but instead I wanted to boil it down to just a couple key takeaways. And the first one is that preparation. The second, lead, don't delegate. And finally, engage the entire campus in your presidential search. Let's get into these at an individual level. So as we mentioned, preparation is key. Start your process from actually the end of what the presidential search ought to look like. What do you think a successful presidency should be? Establish clear guidelines and clear expectations, and perhaps even start to build a presidential evaluation form that you can then present to your potential candidates. Every time that a president has the ability to know how they're going to be evaluated, their tenure may very well end up being longer because they understand exactly what is expected of them. What does a successful president look like to you, effectively? In addition, boards should review their search procedures both when a search begins as well as on a regular basis, usually every 3 or so years. This is because statutory and regulatory issues change relatively frequently. Open meeting laws may go ahead and shift, and it's important to recognize these strictures are kept to when you're beginning this process. As such, we highly recommend that boards form a small subcommittee every couple of years just to go over the basics on these things. Keep it fresh so that if a sudden vacancy pops up, you'll already have people with a baseline knowledge who can help lead the way and guide the board through this complex process. In addition, take stock of your campus's needs. This includes financial data, enrollment data, curricular concerns, and it's also the perfect time to plan on or undertake a campus climate survey. Establish key expectations, specific goals, and measurable objectives. The more that these things can be laid out in fine language for individuals to understand, the less chance you'll have of getting caught up or trip over and having a president or a successful candidate not understand exactly what was required of them. The next one is leadership rather than delegation. So lay boards act as public fiduciaries and are tasked with representing the entire campus community. You cannot be beholden to any individual constituency. You need to listen carefully to recommendations that come up during these presidential searches from other constituencies on campus, but remember that ultimately other groups participate in this process as advisors. The burden of making the final choice is yours and yours alone. Search firms and search consultants can draw from a large list of candidates, but sometimes they can experience issues like with conflicts of interest where a firm has a bunch of different folks that they typically work with, and they're more likely to recommend folks from that list. Consultants, if you decide to use those, are obligated, only to the board. They have no pet candidates. They're usually dedicated just to the governing board, and they see you as the sole client. Now, non-traditional candidates are often something that is overlooked in these processes as well. Only 9% of presidents have had an immediate past position outside of higher education. 82% of presidents spend their career in faculty or on campus administration, and 84% hold a doctorate. It's important to recognize when you're getting a list of candidates potentially from a search firm or for folks that have just been suggested by constituencies on campus. See if there are any non-traditional candidates. See if people are being overlooked in these areas. I'm drawing directly from the American Council of Education's report. There may be underutilized potential to diversify the presidency with career campus administrators and individuals from the public, business, and nonprofit sectors. And finally, engage the entire campus. Consultants and search firms, they're very helpful, but they cannot be the only contributors to this process. When you form a search and steering committee, you're typically looking for between 7 to 15 members, enough where you can basically grab the key constituencies on campus without it being bulky and difficult to manage, hard to get everybody in for a bunch of meetings. This is where shared governance comes into play. Shared governance means that other groups on campus have to have a voice in this process, but the board still ought to lead. Search and steering committees ought to be chaired by a trustee and ought to preferably have a few trustee members on that committee to help support and act as liaisons in between the board and to help the board, the full board, make that final choice as to who the final candidate is going to be. A benefit to that shared governance is that people tend to really support individuals that they helped or positions that they helped create. If you're listening truly to faculty members, to students on campus, to staff and administrators, to alumni, to donors and community members, you're more likely to go ahead and have a more holistic example of what you need on campus. You're more likely to truly hear what these folks are. And this is where we really recommend trying to engage with that community on a real personal level. It's great to have things like trustee town halls or even an impromptu meeting where you can just go ahead and walk around campus, head to the dining hall and ask students, hey, what are the issues that you guys are facing? What can we as board members do to help make the campus more welcoming for you and to help support you throughout your academic career? In addition, an alternative to electing members for that search and steering committee that might be beneficial is to nominate. Ask campus constituencies to fill out a nominating form and to pick a few of the folks who get nominated by multiple people on campus to go ahead and participate with you guys. What you're looking for is engaged and informed governance in this area. You're looking to go ahead and bring together a group of people that really want to be part of this community that you're helping build and really want to put in the time and effort to ensure that the best person is selected for this job. And finally, you have to follow through. This is the big thing that often happens, is that when the president is selected, the search and steering committee is finished up, the board is done with its process, everybody takes a collective sigh and the tension's gone. But the problem is that new presidents need help too. There ought to be some kind of a task force established or a standing committee established of a few trustees who can help the new president during the first 6 to 8 months of their term by basically being there for them, recognizing what they need, answering questions, and helping to fill them in about members of the campus community or constituencies that might be giving them trouble. Remember that every institution and every campus is different. So what you'll often find is that somebody will come in with tons of experience in higher education, say, wow, is this really normal? Is this really how you guys do it? And the best people to answer that job are folks that have a little bit more experience than them. So boards of trustees ought to be able to help them in that position. In addition, it's important for you to establish a good working relationship with the president. Again, it's very, very different how particular boards like to interact with particular presidents. So getting that tempo built up early is a recipe for success in understanding how the next hopefully 5, hopefully 6, hopefully 10 years will go when you're working with a new president.